Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host, Rich Gear, here as well. And we're going to, I guess, Doug, we're going to talk about something about Grand Canyon, which we were going to go out to this year, but since the COVID thing kind of kicked in, things got kind of all mixed up. But we've been there before, Doug.
Yeah, we have been at the Grand Canyon several times, and we appreciated each time that we went there. There seems to be always something new that we discover when we go there, and there's some people that we would visit when we go there. You know, we have Guy Forsyth and David Vonderheide, who were our guides there, and Kevin Anderson was at the Van Andel Creation Research Center in Chino Valley. Now, Chino Valley is pretty much out of the way.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Now, it turns out, I just found out is that they are going to move that to Arizona Christian University, which is right there in northern Phoenix.
So they'll be a little bit more in the loop, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, that'll be a great thing for the Creation Research Society to put their headquarters in Phoenix, so that it isn't so difficult to get to.
Right.
So we're interested in that. They have since the 1970s been in this out of the way place near the Grand Canyon, and I guess they wanted to have it in a spot where it was close to the Grand Canyon, and because that's where a lot of the research has been. But the Phoenix is really not that far away. It's about 2 or 3 or 4 hours drive from Phoenix to the Grand Canyon. So it's a great day trip, but it isn't inaccessible.
Yeah, but out west, Doug, it's interesting how distances are relative. I mean, out here, you drive, 2 hours is like, okay, maybe 100 miles, but out there, 4 hours, 5, it's so spread out. You don't think about it the same way. I don't know. When I lived out there in Wyoming, you drive 4 hours and it was like driving an hour and a half here. It felt the same.
Right. Yeah,
it's just kind of different.
Yeah, and when you're used to that, it's not too bad. Anyway, the Grand Canyon is one of our favorite spots to investigate for creation research because there's a lot of things it reveals in terms of what the model should be for the flood.
Yeah, it's like a big laboratory.
It is a big laboratory. We have most of the rock layers exposed there. There's some that are, and I mentioned this in my book, that they're sort of interbedded, kind of like this, where you have, there's the Mississippian and then the Cambrian strata, then the Mississippian and the Cambrian and the Mississippian. I guess
it's like a shuffled deck of cards with strata,
Now, this is only found in one spot on the North Kaibab Trail, which makes it a little bit different. But if you date the strata by the fossils you find in them, and then you date the fossils you find in them by the strata they're found in, well, you have a little circular reasoning there, and so they.
That has always been a problem.
That is what geology is all about. Is taking what you find in the present and interpret how it got there in the past. Mm-hmm. And you can make the assumption that over millions of years, by one sand grain at a time, all these layers accumulated gradually at the bottom of the shallow sea, and it just sort of trickled down, and that's what became the strata. And
to me, Doug, the thing, I just to interrupt you just for a second, one of the things that always has troubled me about that whole thing of laying down slow accumulations, and I think that this was what John Morris brought this out, and I never thought about it as much as, but there's no real evidence of what's the word I'm looking for? But like growth and things in between. You should see all kinds of germination or insect. Not just fossils buried in multiple layers. You should be finding soil and you know, if it's laid down slowly like that, we know what happens over time. Trees, they create stuff, and there's soil and things built up. There should be artifacts, if you will, and they're just laid right on top of one another. Whether they're upside down or not, it's just based.
You're talking about bioturbation.
Yeah, bioturbation to me is a
which is where you have a lot of dissipation of the rocks based upon of the soils. You know, the worms do this, and it causes the soil to be broken up. But here, what you have is there's layers. First, usually there's sandstone, shales, and limestone.
Okay, all right.
And there's actually in Timothy Cleary's book, he talks about this. He calls them mega sequences. Tim's book is called Carved in Stone, and we actually have two books by creationists here with me. I have Carved in Stone, and then The Deep Time Deception by Michael Oard. Now, these are two different creationists with two different theories. We have Timothy Cleary's theory, which is based upon John Baumgartner's theory of catastrophic plate tectonics. And then Michael Oard is more of a proponent of vertical tectonics, and we'll talk about both of those little models a little bit. Catastrophic plate tectonics is the idea that you have a runaway subduction causing the continents to slide over on top of each other, and it's actually sucking the continents down into the mantle.
Yeah, the mantle, yeah, like that.
And then they have the splitting apart of the continents at the mid-Atlantic ridge.
Okay.
And so you have a lot of volcanism put together like that. And the volcanism would have been one of the things that happened during the flood.
Yes.
And so that would have been, that's part of the catastrophic plate tectonics model. And Michael Oard's idea, and this was something that Roy Holt, who's passed away now, but he was part of the Missouri group, creation group, and he was proposing this, that all the sediments accumulated on the ocean floor, and then there was sort of like a shift in the tectonics, where the mountains rose and the valleys sank, like the scriptures talk about, and you had the ocean basins rose up, and where it was volcanism, a lot of the basalt, which is these find the ocean bottoms, especially at mid-Atlantic ridge.
Yeah, a lot of basalt, yeah.
That's the basalt, and so good place to study this is in Iceland. Iceland is sitting right on the mid-Atlantic ridge, and you can see it. If you go there, you see
we ought to make a trip there someday.
Iceland is on my wife's bucket list.
Oh, it is Iceland, huh?
So that and New Zealand. New Zealand's on
I
our
got
bucket.
to New Zealand, yeah.
She wants to go back. She had a chance to go there in September, and that was before all this crap hit. We were talking about doing that this spring, and also going to the Grand Canyon this spring, and that sort of went by the wayside in a number of ways. But we had a rim and raft tour planned, and we would have gone rafting on the Grand Canyon. Always wanted to do that. Never had the real chance to do it.
We had it this year, but we didn't. It turned out didn't have it. So
and so there was other circumstances involved. We won't get into that, but that would have prevented that anyway. But hopefully, we'll get to do that next year.
Maybe next year, if we're still around, we'll try it again.
But anyway, back to the Grand Canyon. There's a number of different theories about the formation of Grand Canyon. You want to talk about one of them, Rich?
Well, which one are you talking about, from a creationist perspective?
From the creationist perspective.
Yeah, there's the breach dam theory.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's the one where, in fact, there seems to be some evidence. The natives, the Hopi, and some of them have actually, I think it's or the Navajo. I can't remember which was the Navajo or
It was
both of them.
Hopi, yeah.
But they basically, some of them have claimed that their ancestors saw the Grand Canyon be formed. And what happens is that after the flood, there would have been a lot of places where there would have been big water buildup. Think about on a small scale. You know when you got like a little pool and you drain the pool out, and the bottom has got these bumps and divots and stuff like that, and there's places where water collects. Think about that on a continental scale. This is what you're talking about here. Mm-hmm. And so there was areas of where water was built up behind sediment, which wasn't quite either solidified or it was a little bit loose, whatever. And it was actually sort of like a dam, but at some point the pressure gets too much, and it actually bursts it, causing an incredible gouging action and carving action. And some of the Indians, they say that the way they described it is like they saw the water and then it went through a hole and out came the Grand Canyon. I mean, that's in a sense kind of what we're talking about here. That's the breach dam where that would have happened. I'm simplifying it, of course, but we have evidence, Doug. Like I say, one of our other laboratories, Mount St. Helens, where you see a canyon 1/40th the size of Grand Canyon formed in about just a couple of days, just a few days, mm-hmm. and sediments laid down just like that. So there's just a lot of things out there that really indicate that this was catastrophism or incredible. In other words, the theory is, Doug, does it take a little bit of water a long period of time to make the Grand Canyon, or a lot of water a short period of time?
Right.
Okay. Now we do believe that the flood was probably the Grand Canyon was post-flood action primarily. Right, Doug? That's what I've always got figured that it would have been, because the sediment was already laid down. This would have been continental. The deluge would have, by tidal action, the sediments would have been washing to and fro, and of course, based on the particulate matter, how fine and how heavy each thing was depends on how it gets laid out, generally speaking. But there's turbulence, so it isn't always that way. But then after they were laid down, that's when these pockets of water, and I say pockets, you're talking big, massive lakes, huge lakes the size of Lake Michigan, and places like that, maybe some really big areas of water. In fact, we went down to, was it Medicine Hat, or what's the name of the place? When we were driving through there, it almost looked like we were looking at the remains of a big water basin.
You're talking about Mexican Hat.
Mexican Hat, I see it.
Yeah, this is in Utah. Mexican Hat is near the San Juan River. It's on the San Juan River.
Okay, yeah.
You're talking about the goosenecks?
Yes, and we were going. And you could, when you're looking at it, I think of the old song. What a desert is an ocean with its life underground. I think about the point. Mm. It almost sounds like there was an ocean there. You could almost see, because the way it was shaped in the bowl, but it was empty.
Right.
And you think about the Grand Canyon, Doug, if that could have been one of the ways, it's the way the runoffs, the side tributaries, if you will, of the Colorado River, they seem the way they're aimed, the way they're kind of put in
if
there.
If you take a look at the little Colorado River, at Cameron, where that Indian trading post is, there's a little canyon there where the Cameron is. But when you're going from Cameron up, and then you go up the mountain to get to the rim of the Grand Canyon, you're going up in elevation several thousand feet.
Yes.
And so the little Colorado River, it looks like it's going from maybe a few hundred feet at Cameron to about a few thousand feet when it empties into the Colorado River.
Okay.
And so that mesa up there is actually backwards of what you would expect it to be, because it's the elevation shows it that way. Now, when we were out there, we were looking for maybe where there might have been a shoreline for this Hopi Lake or whatever.
Right, the one they said drained out.
Drained out into this. And I didn't see anything there, and this is the point of Michael Oard, who was talking this one. He says, Stephen Austin, he's the Grand Canyon guy, and he likes this breach dam idea, but Michael Oard seems to think that we're talking about post-flood runoff as a sheet going across this area and carving the canyon, and then it finds a little crease, and then you see everything draining down this this particular area.
So if there are differences, and there's significant differences, but there's similarities too, Doug.
There are, yes. And so what instead of having a post-flood a couple of lakes, Grand Lake and Hopi Lake was Stephen Austin's idea, but the problem is that there's really no lake beds that sort of line up with this that would have been at that spot. And so I'm kind of liking Michael Oard's idea that you have post-flood runoff all at once. Doing this now, this
rather than later on,
right?
Going, okay, all right.
But that sort of flies in the face of your Hopi Indian story. So we're trying to make sense of what is presented by the
in some respects, people. In some respects, we are in the same boat as an evolutionist. Okay, we weren't there either. We have basically though a testimony that tells us there was a worldwide flood. Right. And so based on those things, hydraulics and hydrodynamics and things of that nature, you try to figure out how water, but still, it was a one-time event, Doug. And so it's not testable or repeatable, thank God, I do, that it's not going to happen again. But within that, you can make certain extrapolations based upon what you see in the present. So Doug, we have to extrapolate from into the past as well. But we do have a testimony where the deep time advocates, the evolutionary advocates, it just made up out of whole cloth. There was nobody there, but there's nobody even that claims to be there. Because you're talking about millions and billions of years ago. Okay.
Now we have something else that's interesting is that I did an article a while back taking an account from an old book that I have about the Salton Sea.
Oh yeah.
And this was a novel, actually a historical novel called The Winning of Barbara Worth, written in 1911. This was just a few years after this event took place, where the Colorado River, as it was, they were developing the irrigation system. They had a flood, and it sort of got away from them, and the entire course of the Colorado River took two paths. New River, and it went and started emptying into this basin in Southern California, which is now known as Salton Sea.
Oh yeah.
And so that went on for 2 years until they finally got the breach fixed. And so it's now going where it is into the Gulf of California. But all of the sediment that came from the Grand Canyon dumped in that particular spot in western Arizona and eastern California.
Okay.
And all that sediment was unconsolidated. There's a lot of sand in that area.
So it's not cemented together, and it's loose.
I've been through that area a couple of times, and there's some real big sand dunes in that area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they irrigated that for Imperial Valley, where they grow a lot of our vegetables and stuff today, and so it's a pretty fertile place because it has all the alluvial sediments from the Colorado River.
Where's that, Doug, again? Where?
Southern California.
Okay, it's California. Okay.
Yeah, it's east of San Diego.
Okay, so it's above Baja then, right?
Yeah, it's above Baja, and Mexicali and those areas were a part of the
Salton Sea is up it's down in that area.
Yeah, it's in that area, Imperial Valley. And so I remember that when I was out there, we could see the Salton Sea from Mount Laguna, which was in San Diego. But the Grand Canyon really fits the idea of a flood model a whole lot better than the evolutionary model, and because there's you can see there's a spot at the bottom of the canyon called the Great Unconformity, where you have a lot of the Precambrian sediments, and they're sort of tilted along this way. But there's a great planation event that had taken place, where the whole tops of the is tilted. The whole tops of that tilted strata was scoured off.
Oh yeah.
And then you have these other layers deposited on top.
Yeah.
And so you can see there is a lot of upheaval that took place, and in my mind, that's something that only can be explained by a global flood event, where you have waters covering this whole area, and tidal action creating sedimentation events, where each final layer is a daily tidal event.
Well, and then the shifting, like tilting. You know, there's volcanism. There's plate. Like I said, there is tectonics or plate. Things move, uplifting and things like that. But it's also a lot of the stuff was sheared off or before it was really solidified, wasn't it? Or it was still.
And you can see that. You can see that at Joggins. Joggins is tilted at an angle where you have like 18,000 feet of strata, all tilted on the side, but the top of it is all planed off.
Yeah.
And you see that all throughout Nova Scotia and throughout Newfoundland, and Ian Juby shows this in some of his videos that he does. And so
is that where they have the polystrate fossils?
Yes, you can see and buried in this sediment are these trees that are going up through the strata. Now, Ian was pointing out that they were actually buried. Many of them were buried upside down. Yeah. And the reason, and the Charles Lyell, when he looked at this, he thought they were root systems, and that they were. But they were actually tree branches that he thought were roots. And so these fossilized trees upside down.
Trees don't grow upside down.
And they don't grow through strata.
Yeah, and they don't grow through strata.
So this indicates this was a big time, one-time flood event. And so that's our case for the Grand Canyon. Now I remember when there was I mentioned this strata intermixing in my book, Revolution Against Evolution.
You mean?
And I still have that in my book, my new version, which has just come out this month. And there was a fellow who challenged me on this, and he said, well, you know that between those two strata, there's the Temple Butte formation, which is Devonian, and so. But I told him, hey, I recognize the Temple View formations there in some places, but it's not there in this particular spot, and it's pinched off in other places.
Yeah.
And so this is more of an indication that there was. These were all part of the same event, laying these things down. And just various. It's the fossil order.
But again, it's what fossils are found in there.
Right.
Doug, I tell you what, and we got a little time. I got a book called The Devonian Controversy. Way back in 1809, they had already got this sediment. They had already laid down what it was going to be like, and Devonian is much earlier than the dinosaur period of time, But they had this all laid out before any of the radiometric dating things ever came out. They had it all formulated out. And yet you don't really find it in a lot of spots. You find all kinds of anomalies, upside down formations, tilted formations. What I really think is amazing is, and this only indicates if it was laid down when it was sort of liquid, because when you see the wavy action, when you see setup, when you see layers, and they're in a wave action, and you're going, that's like they're getting what, just moved, because they're still soft.
Yeah, like in
they're still very plastic.
in the Empire Mountains, where
It's amazing stuff.
where the contact lighting is like that.
Yeah, you know.
And so these it's much easier to explain these sediments from a flood model than it is to describe it from an evolutionary model. And and you have interbedding of the strata. Where cross-bedding, where you can see the layers go like this and then like this and then like this, and we can see that at Walnut Canyon quite a bit.
Where's that word, Walnut Canyon?
It's just east of Flagstaff.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, and so that's where the Indian ruins are. But it's definitely a great spot for looking at strata. And then in Sedona, the Schnebly Hill Formation is what forms all the red rocks there, but that's absent in the Colorado River area in the Grand Canyon. And so there's spots where you have certain formations, but and actually the sediments are 1,000 feet lower in
is that right?
than they are in the Grand Canyon. So it looks like there was a shift, in a tectonic shift that took place between there.
Maybe that could be some of the reason why Michael Oard's thing could actually work, and because water running off, but how is it cut? But it must be finding stuff. And if you have something that's higher than another spot, then you'll have drainage. You'll have runoff, on a continental scale.
So from a creation standpoint, I think that these are good times to be a creationist and to start thinking outside of the box. We're going to challenge the evolutionists to do that, to think in terms of a biblical global flood that was described in the Bible historically by Moses, talking about the flood of Noah, and that the creation account is true. And the evidence that is sitting there in the Bible and in science support each other. And but the Bible doesn't have to compromise with error. And we've had the error for 150 years or more, and now it's time to look at this again with a different point of view and challenge it according to what the Bible has to say.
Look at it with a different set of spectacles.
Well, hope you enjoyed our time in Revolution Against Evolution and the Grand Canyon. We'll see you next time.